Welcome back to Don's Life. Welcome to the channel. Thanks for joining today. I wanted to share a list of issues and some tips that I feel have possibly given my GMC Sierra AT4 a good run since I bought her back at the beginning of 2021. Now let me be clear, this is not to say that all the tips and suggestions that I share are going to provide you with worry-free ownership of a similar vehicle, but I thought it would be good to get in front of you as an actual owner, share my experiences, and not just somebody that's reviewed one for several hours or several days. So let's go. As you can see, we're in my actual Don's Life garage. It is still under a little bit of renovation, but most of the primer is now done for all of the mudding and taping. So it's starting to clean up. I got to film a video for the AT4 separately in the garage today, so I got to spend some time doing that. So we're going to take this video on the road. So how I came up with this list as I went through all of the videos of my GMC Sierra AT4 and the issues that I encountered with the truck in its stock form. Now I've had a few issues that were of concern, and I've since implemented best practices, and I think since then have been trouble-free. And for the keyboard warriors, I welcome you to share your thoughts in the comment section, but also if you've had issues with your GMC Sierra AT4, please share any best practices that you've implemented that the audience could benefit from. So in true Canadian fashion, I think we should get on with it and head to a Tim Hortons and grab a coffee and talk about my list. Let's talk about the first symptom, electrical gremlins. And what I mean by that is screens not responding, not turning on, not displaying information right away. Maybe there are a number of warnings being flashed on your screen, or maybe there is a check engine light, and when you go and run a diagnostic with a scanner, you end up finding out that it is a signal issue. Something didn't get a signal from this module or that module. And what I found that's really kept it at bay is a battery tender or a battery conditioner. In my case, I use a C-Tech smart charger. I believe in their product and I think they're very good. Once a month, I hook it up just to make sure that my AGM battery, which is still a lead acid battery, it's just a higher quality, more efficient version of a lead acid battery, it has to be kept in tip-top shape. And since doing that, my electrical gremlins have reduced or almost non-existent. I did have an issue with a screen turning off on me, but I think that had to do with a mod that I had done. Once I changed a couple things on the mod, that really went away, so I can't really count that. But I do believe that a battery tender or conditioner, or in this case, a C-Tech smart charger, is a great investment for any of your vehicles, especially ones with these electronics that will do updates in the middle of the night when the vehicle's not on. I mean, these are things that you need to consider that are drawing from your battery, even if you've never added a modification to it. And another tip for my cold climate viewers, like myself up here in Canada, if you're in a super cold environment, give your battery some help, plug in the vehicle to a block heater, park indoors if you have the option, because those extra cranking amps, you're going to need them to fire the engine and power all these systems. Because initially, if you don't have that power, what ends up happening is you can throw a code, a signal doesn't register, and usually everything's fine. It was just a bad start. Help yourself out and look after that as well. I'm just scoping out the Tim Hortons drive-through line and it is too long, so we're going to do a mobile order quick and we're just going to walk in and pick up our coffee. So I know what you're thinking. Does it taste any good? Not especially, no, but it does fill a void in my soul. The next symptom is misfires. I've had a bunch. They've spanned a larger gap in time, but these are the anecdotal solutions that I found. So I don't know if they're going to work for you, but they seem to be helping me, and even some of them are recommended in the owner's manual. So I've always been running 91 octane or better When I'm in the province or area that I live in, all I have available to me is 91. But if you can run 93, I would go with that. But 91 at a bare minimum, that's actually in the owner's manual. Now, I've also had a misfire running 91 octane the entire life of this truck. So what if you've had some bad fuel? So I have added a fuel treatment one time when I thought that might be the case, and it seemed to have resolved the issue. So maybe a fuel treatment here or there is a good solution, or an add-on as well. Now the next one's highly controversial, but I do think that disabling DFM is a better way to go. At least I prefer it. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. A lot of people don't have problems. We haven't disabled DFM in my wife's Escalade, and it's essentially the same engine. But for whatever, with these GMC Sierras, I like how it sounds when you disable DFM. I also like how it behaves when you disable DFM. So what I'm talking about in short is you can either disable DFM with something like a Pulsar LT on these newer GMC Sierra platforms, or you can shift your transmission into manual mode, keep it from being able to reach its top gear. So for me, when you go into manual mode, it's signified by L. So L1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way up to 10 speeds. I keep it at L9, and then it shifts automatically all between gears 1 to 9. And then if I'm on the highway, I do like to put it in drive, which gives access to that 10th gear. And then that way my fuel economy is a little better, because some people want fuel economy and I do on long road trips. But around town, I drive an L9, which is a free way of disabling dynamic fuel management. I have videos about that. Definitely go check them out. I'll try to remember to link them in the description below. But I do think that that actually helps with some of the misfire issues that exist, because I'm not shutting down cylinders constantly as I'm driving around town, which is typically what this truck does the most. To be clear, if you have a part installed in your engine that is known to fail, it could fail whether or not you disable DFM if the build quality just isn't there. So I'm not saying this is the save-all, but it's just what I choose to do, and here we are really 3 years later and we're fine. But that might not have anything to do with the DFM working or not. Now, one thing I've been consistent with since owning this vehicle is more frequent oil changes. I do my oil changes in shorter intervals than what the manufacturer suggests. I don't use my oil life gauge as my indicator. I go every 3,000 miles, which is 5,000 kilometers, and I use a ultra premium synthetic oil. Right now it's Pennzoil Platinum. I've found that, at least in my mind, I'm giving my engine what it needs to function at its peak performance at all times. Now the next one is another controversial and highly debatable add-on. Now I did talk about a stock truck issue, but again, I talked about tips or solutions to help keep these issues at bay, at least they have for me, and that's an oil catch can or separator. Think about it for a second. Blow-by gases are part of the PCV system. You're going to send air back into the top end of your engine, into the intake manifold, and that air, if there's contaminants in it, those contaminants need to be burnt off. Well, anytime you burn something, there's going to be a residue or residual product left behind. In this case, it's going to be buildup in the top end of your engine. So why not avoid most of that and have a system in place that catches all of those contaminants, that crud, that junk, holds it for you, and allows more clean air back into the upper part of your engine. So you just have a cleaner running engine. The science makes sense to me. And I know this is a highly debated one. Why don't manufacturers put them in if they're so good? Because everything has cost to it. But most people are just driving their vehicles till they run them into the ground, and they're replacing them like disposable things. I want my truck to last as long as possible. I think this helps me. Again, it's just a personal choice. What you do is really up to you. It doesn't affect me in any way. I'm just sharing with you what I've done, because that might be of interest to you and you might be curious. And don't forget, if you add on something like an oil catch can or separator, it has to be drained in intervals. Those intervals get more frequent in the winter months. So I installed a drain hose on mine so I can access the ability to drain it just a little easier. But just keep in mind that when you add something like this, it's one more thing to think about when it comes to maintenance. Now the next one's not a major one, but I did have my transmission, or maybe it was my transfer case that overheated. Either way, that system had overheated. It was my own fault. It was from doing some off-road driving in the deep snow, and I was stuck. So I was rocking back and forth, plowing my way through. And really what happens is it gives you an overheating warning in your infotainment screen here in the cluster. And all I did was I shut it off. I think I let it sit for about 10-15 minutes. Fired it back up and it was fine again. So the solution there is obey the warnings that come up on your dash, shut it off, let it cool down, start it up again, and everything was fine. So I love that we do have those type of monitors and systems in our vehicles, because that could have been an expensive fix. Now granted, the transmission was sitting in a few feet of snow, so that probably helped cool it off too. Now the next couple are more annoyances, but to me they're still issues. That's why I've included them in my list. But the first one is auto start stop. By default, as you know, and assuming that you have the chip and the functionality in place in the vehicle, I know through COVID, many trucks, they didn't put this chip in because it's not like a primary system. But I was so lucky that they gave me the chip when I had ordered mine. So either way, you have to remember when you get in to push the switch to make sure that auto start stop doesn't shut your vehicle off at every intersection when you come to a stop or you're just behind somebody in traffic. And I've read online quite a few people that have said they've had to replace starters and they're blaming the auto start stop system for wearing out their starter prematurely because maybe their driving habits require the vehicle to keep shutting off in these situations way more than maybe the average person. I'm not really sure, but in my mind it's like, why not give the starter the best chance possible, because eventually these things are going to fail, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, who knows. But I don't like the feature, so I installed a bypass which allows me to still use the full functionality of it. I can actually turn it back to its factory setting where it's on by default, but the only difference here is I can have it so it's off by default when I get into the vehicle, and then I'd only have to remember if I want the feature to turn it on. So I like that setup better, and I think that's how it should be from all manufacturers right from the get-go. But that's one little mod that I did that I feel is some preventative maintenance and keeping issues that could present themselves at bay. Now there is another way to disable auto start stop than getting the little inline wiring kit that I bought, which was from Auto Start Stop Eliminator. You can get a Pulsar LT that has the functionality to do it, or you can simply drive in manual mode like the L9 I was talking about, and that will do it as well. But before I really researched L9 and decided to implement it, I did this mod, so I just wanted to tell you about it. And the last one, again, more in the annoyance category, but the slow wireless charging from the manufacturer. I recommend adding a secondary wireless charger, whether it's from Boost Auto Parts or somebody else. I'm pretty sure that any wireless charger that you add, if the option's available for your platform, is going to charge your phone, depending on the phone and the thickness, at a faster rate than what the manufacturer one is going to charge at. And it's more convenient if you're going to carry passengers that you have more than one charging area that doesn't require a bunch of wires going everywhere. Well, that's my list. I'm just going to drive quickly back to the Don's Life garage and we're going to wrap this video up. Well, my friends, that's my relatively short list of issues that I've had with my GMC Sierra AT4 in its stock form. I hope it provides some insight or some best practices that you may want to employ if you don't do them already. So I know I'd like to hear from any of you in the comments down below about issues you've experienced as an owner of this platform of vehicle. Please share a best practice that you feel might help others, especially those owners out there that have one of these vehicles or maybe getting into one, whether it be new or used. I know we could all benefit from just talking with each other. But if you like today's video, please hit that like button, please consider subscribing, and we'll talk to you next time.